being a good communicator, I think would be the most important trait or skill that you can have as a public servant, or even like a business owner, is being able to communicate, to develop a message and be able to share that message with people.
Main Street businesses are struggling as they face challenges nothing like we've seen before. You're listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. Let's learn from real-world Main Street entrepreneurs, pick their brains, and learn their secrets to navigate, persevere, and overcome all the modern obstacles they face every day. Get ready to peek behind the stories, the struggles, and strategies of today's Main Street entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Behind Main Street podcast. Here's your host, Chris J. Cardona.
Great day, everyone. Welcome to the show. Whether it's your first time listening or an avid follower, thank you so much for joining us. Show notes can be found at www.behindmainstreet.com. But before we get started, I would like to thank the sponsor for this episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thinkin' Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission is to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact in the local community with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting local.com.
Awesome. For today's episode, I'm super excited to interview Greg Marquez, a police officer with the Irvine PD. He is also an adjunct professor at Chaffey College and serves the community of Chino as a member of the Chino Community Services Commission. He has a different perspective of Main Street, which is why I'm super excited to unpack and learn from him. Greg, are you ready to take us behind the curtains and dig into your story?
Yes, I am, and thank you for inviting me to be on the Behind Main Street podcast. And it's a great opportunity to just talk and get some messages out there. So thank you.
Wonderful.
Bring out the shovels. Let's dig for gold.
So, Greg, I've given our listeners a little bit of a sneak peek of who you are. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do?
So I do a lot of different things. I live here in Chino. I've been in Chino for about 15 years with my wife, Angie, and my daughter, Andrea, and my son, Jacob. I'm a full-time police officer. That's my full-time job. And like you mentioned, I'm an adjunct instructor at Chaffey College in the criminal justice program. Been there for a few years. And I actually have another job in Chaffey where I teach instructors how to build content on their for their online classes. I'm a community services commissioner for the city of Chino. I do volunteer work also with the Chino Neighborhood House and City of Chino. So always busy, always running around, whether it's family stuff, work stuff, volunteer stuff, and then running this campaign for city councils. It's been a big project.
Wow. Well, you're pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. They're wearing many different hats, but the great thing about
Right.
what you're able to do is it's all centered on the community, which is very, very fascinating. From your day job to your volunteer job for what you're trying to do within the community, it's all tied together, which is fantastic. Maybe you can tell us and our listeners a little bit more, something interesting that your family and friends would say about you.
Something interesting. I think one of the things that people find interesting is how I have time to do all this stuff. And it's funny because you have to balance that work-life relationship and, reading and studying and doing all this stuff. But I think just the interesting part is how many things I do and how involved I am. Anytime a new idea comes up, I'm always willing to get involved or help promote something or, build some content on social media. And I think it's interesting too, because I create a lot of my own content. So instead of hiring like someone to film and do stuff, I've done a ton of research, like learning from people on YouTube, buying all the equipment and just learning different camera movements and lighting and sound and all this different stuff. So I could create content. I guess that's something most police officers don't really do. So I know how to create media content and put it out there. And I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen your stuff for friends on Facebook, and I definitely see all the stuff that you're doing, not only for yourself but for your campaign and stuff like that. It's fascinating. You are right. A lot of the stuff that I see out there are highly polished, produced, sometimes overproduced. I would say. I think
Yeah,
for you, a lot of your campaign materials, a lot of the messaging that you do, even the stuff that you're doing. When you're out there promoting the local businesses, which is very, very fascinating. That's one of the things that I was excited to have you on the podcast. Is you do, I guess, as a police officer, you're really out there, right? On like
right.
serving the community and being part of the community. But the other thing outside of that, when you come home to our community here in Chino Valley, you're out there supporting a local business, promoting them, and things of that nature, which is fascinating to be able to do with I would imagine the scarce resource of time that you have. You're able to do that, and being able to do it yourself, I think is a great
Yeah.
thing to a great tool to have.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, because creating content, like even editing video, like I've learned how to edit my own videos, and learning different programs and which ones are more efficient and quicker. But you're right, it's quick just to get your message out. People see your message, and it could be entertaining, it could be serious, it could be funny. I try to show both sides of who I am as a person.
Absolutely. How would you describe your overall mission in life?
My overall mission in life is to serve others. I'm very passionate about my religious faith, and that's always been centered upon helping others. And it's not like a humble brag or anything. It's just I see there's a need to help people, and ever since I was a kid, I started off like in Boy Scouts, and in Boy Scouts, I noticed and I was taught that people come from different backgrounds, people have different opportunities, and when you help someone, you might not solve all their problems in one day or one event or one giveaway, but people do appreciate it. It means something to people when you help clean up their neighborhood, or you take them food or clothing, and you give that it's that connection with someone that is fulfilling to me, but also be part of like bigger projects where you're helping people. When I was a kid, I did Boy Scouts. In high school, I was part of campus ministry. In college, I was in a fraternity that did community projects. I did police cadets for Whittier PD when I was in my early 20s or late teens, early 20s. I was a community service officer at Cal State Long Beach. I worked in an ambulance, and I've been a police officer. And during that time, I've worked in programs such as I was a police officer in Rialto for 13 years, and I was a volunteer for the Pride Platoon program, which was a youth group boot camp. So my whole life has been revolved around I'll do it, I'll help. How can I help? Kind of. So I believe my mission is to serve other people.
That's fantastic. What would you say people around you would misunderstand about you the most?
I'm sorry. They would misunderstand because I know so many people, and it's hard for me to remember names. So I'm always studying names before I go to an event. So sometimes when I forget someone's name, they feel like maybe I don't care or don't value them, and I'm misunderstood. Like, oh, he forgot my name. I've seen him 10 times, and he still doesn't know my name. I do know their name. It's just there's so many different communities of people that I belong to, and knowing all those names. So sometimes before I go to an event or go to a function, I'll study the names, and then if I meet new people, I'll make a note of who I met, and that way I have something to recollect. Because sometimes people will see me at community events, and they'll ask, "Oh, what was my name? Do you remember?" They'll quiz me, like so. And it's so that's something people misunderstand, that they think I don't care. I do care about their names. I care about every person that I meet. It's just sometimes remembering those names is difficult.
Yeah, I think you're gonna find that more and more, especially you're putting your content out there on social media. There's a lot of
Yeah,
times, like sometimes for me, I work with different clients here in the Chino Valley area. Sometimes putting different hats. I'm either for this, representing this client or that client today and stuff like that. So I get to talk to a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives, right? And then sometimes they'll say hi to me, and I'm talking to them. I'm having a full blown conversation,
yeah,
and I don't know who they are. Not that,
yeah,
and I'm sure we met because they know me, they know my name, and we're having a conversation. It's just not to be mean. It's just like you said. There's just so much out there that it's hard to remember all of them. And I'm like you, I'm bad with remembering names as well.
Yeah,
Is
sometimes people misunderstand that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are listening to this episode, don't misunderstand us, especially Greg. If he doesn't remember your name, he knows who you are.
Yeah.
You just remind him.
Yeah.
If there is one thing that you would say that you value most in life, what would you say that would be?
I value my faith and my family. So I combine those because they're my family is my motivation. They're my inspiration for everything I do. And, without God, none of this is possible. And God has given us good health and great opportunities in life to help other people. And my wife and I are teaching our children how to serve others too. And I think that's important. I think everything that I do has to have some type of meaning. It has to be meaningful work. It has to be something to help people. So I would say that the number one thing is my faith.
Fantastic. I ask our guests this all the time. A lot of us were thinking of the legacy that we're going to be leaving behind, in years to come when we pass away, right? Um, but have you had any thoughts about the impact that you will have in the short term, like in 5 years or so?
My short term goal is to serve on the city council, and that's been the main thing for my campaign. I believe I have a lot of skills and abilities, and I want to bring those skills and abilities to my city where I live and be a connector, and be able to form these relationships with people in the community, with our businesses, with our county officials, our state officials, and these decisions that are made reflect the values and beliefs of the people in your district who get to vote for you. And it's important for people to know who I am as a person and how I can represent them.
Fantastic. I'm curious, if you had $100 million tomorrow, what would Greg spend it on?
Wow, that's a tough one. $100 million. I would like to focus on my community. I think my community would be a place because this is where I live. My family lives here. My wife's family live here, and investing in, I would make like a wish list, for different
Mhm.
organizations. What do they need, and try to help other people financially because money is important. People can't do things without money. You can't buy new things. You can't eat. You can't. Everything costs money. So, in ways that I can help share that money and make sure that it's being spent wisely, that would be, I wouldn't just give it out just, hey, here's money. I want to know what they're going to do with it. And people who have a plan. There's a lot of entrepreneurs in this city. There's a lot of artists, a lot of musicians who might need something. Let's say they put in a proposal like, hey, I need a camera, I need video equipment so that I could record myself. That would be something I could just write a check and help people out. And if they have an opportunity to make more money with the money I give them, like kind of like a grant, but just give people money and help people achieve their dreams. Like I have a brother-in-law who has a tent shop. I would love to buy him a shop and, have him have his shop here in Chino and help people in the community who want to do business. And if people around me, if you're, and that's the whole thing with servant leadership, you help people become better and, it's just about giving and sharing.
That's fascinating that you said that, right? Like being able to, like, you're going to give them more opportunities to be able to grow the community, but not just by handing out money, but being able to invest in entrepreneurship. Because the entrepreneurship, what that will mean then is it will self generate more money, more
Yeah.
income for the community so that we could
Yeah.
be able to get a better outcome overall, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
that's a great answer, because a lot of times when we think about it is we're just handing out the money, but when we're investing in
Right.
them, giving them the seed. I forgot. I think I was at an event this week in Ontario where there's an organization. The name of the organization is like the Esperanza Foundation,
Uh-huh.
and what they do is they're giving out like grants and scholarship seed money for these young students to be able to maybe go to college and things of that nature, and they're investing in that. And a lot of times these community people are, I mean, they come back to the community and serve, that
Right.
community, and that helps their community grow overall. So thank you so much for thinking about that. If you had $100 million and thinking about
Yeah.
us here in the community.
Yeah. There's a lot of organizations that need private funding. Like the Chino Youth Museum. You have Chino Neighborhood House, Isaiah's Rock. There's people and you choose. There's these organizations are doing great work in the community, but they might need a place to store stuff, or maybe need an office front, or they might need something. That'd be a great opportunity to help someone out. I wish there was that. I wish there was that money available right now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I mean, maybe you can let us know a little bit more about your childhood. How was that like when you were growing up?
My childhood was good. I grew up. I'm an '80s baby, so life was a lot simpler before social media and all this technology out there. But I grew up in Whittier. I have two brothers. I have an older brother, Mike, and my younger brother, Steve. And grew up playing sports. Did Boy Scouts. I did baseball when I was younger. In high school, I wrestled all 4 years. And in college, I went to Cal State Long Beach. So I had a fun childhood. I don't have anything that I wish I would have done. I had fun. I had a lot of friends, and we didn't travel a lot, but that's something that I do now with my family. We enjoy traveling. So
That's
my
really, really
childhood was good.
awesome. When you were a kid, did you have a dream career? Did you dream of becoming a cop, or was it like a public servant, or it may be something completely different? Did you have that dream career as a child?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a police officer, and my dad's a doctor, and my uncle was a LAPD officer, and I'm not good at math and science, and I knew that from a very young age. So I said, you know what, I'll be a police officer. But it's always been a passion of mine. I've always wanted to help people and protect people. I've always had that protective instinct, even as a kid. I originally wanted to go into the military, but my dad convinced me to go to college, and I had was my girlfriend at the time, now wife, I was dating, so that kind of swayed my decision to go in the military. So um, it was a interesting, what I mean, to make that decision, but I don't have any regrets.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you said you didn't like math growing up, or maybe you liked it like me. I liked it. It just didn't like me back. um,
Yeah,
was there
exactly.
any, did you like school overall? Was there any other subjects that you had a particular inclination for?
Yeah, I really enjoy writing.
Okay.
And in high school specifically, our literature instructors had us read a lot of different books, and I like to read, and I love to write. Even now in my campaign things, I come up with ideas, and I'll sit down, I'll type them out or jot them down in my notes, like things that I ideas I have, or messages that I hear that I like, and I'll write them down. And so that was probably one of my favorite subjects in high school and in college, was just being able to research and read and write. And then as I got older, public speaking too became another subject that I really enjoyed in college. I have a minor in communications, but I focused a little bit more on public speaking. And then I did Toastmasters for a little bit, and then just reading books, communication books, books like Talk Like Ted, that's a good book.
Yeah.
It's one of my go-to books, just to get some advice or some inspiration for public speaking.
Fantastic. Was there something, when you look back in your childhood, you feel that sort of led you to where you are now, or the trajectory of your life today?
I don't think any specific one event. I think it was just the way I was raised to to help people, and I never thought of becoming like a business owner and taking a corporate job. I always felt that I wanted to protect people, and that's why I chose to be a police officer. I always had that. That's why I did police cadets. I did community service officer. So all my decisions in my life aligned to what I wanted to do. So I've never smoked. I've never smoked a cigarette. Never smoked weed. I made good decisions. In my adult life, I smoked cigars, but I've never committed any crimes. I always kept a clean background because I knew someday I was going to be a police officer. So I think that helped guide all of my decisions. If other people made bad choices, that was on them. But for myself, I I didn't I knew I had to keep a clean background, and that was always like my dream. And everything I did was to pursue that dream to become a police officer.
That's fascinating. I think you having the recognition of wanting to become something when you grew up, like, which you fulfilled, becoming a police officer, helped you sort of create a path towards that.
Yeah,
Like if you know the direction of, or if you know where you want to go, it's easier to figure out a direction and the easiest path to be able to get to that particular spot. And you not having to take those detours and kind of keep it
right.
straight, got you there faster, being able to succeed in that line of work. When you were a
Yeah.
kid, like you said, your dad was a doctor, and you wanted to, like you said, you wanted to serve. Was there a particular age that you sort of had that turning point? Like, you know what, I saw something in school, or I saw somebody being bullied, things of that nature. Was there something like that in your life that you would consider sort of a turning point that made you kind of decide, you know what, this solidified my desire to become a police officer or serve the community, in the future?
Yeah. I think my experience in Boy Scouting
Okay.
um, really sparked that interest because I saw the way other people lived in other communities and impoverished communities where there was a lot of gang violence. And some of the projects that one of our scout leaders worked in LA City, Phil Orozco, which I still talk to this very day. And the projects that we did were like community cleanup projects or clothing drives or food drives for these impoverished areas in LA. And it really made me want to help others because you see kids that were afraid, and it's just like, why do they have to live in fear? Why does there need to be a police officer just to protect us while we're planting trees? And some of these areas were that bad where they had to have a security detail just for the volunteers that were helping clean up. And you take it for granted where you live because I could go outside, I could leave my kids outside, and they could play basketball or play in the streets. And in streets like those that people don't feel safe, it's not that easy just to go out and play in the streets. And even when I worked in Rialto, there were some really bad neighborhoods where people were afraid of gang violence, and my partners and I would just drive and just park there and just to be there so that people would come out and they would play and hang out and enjoy being outside, not having that fear. And people take that for granted, and that was something that I learned as a young kid.
Wow, thank you for bringing that up. Well, now that we've gotten to know your story a little bit more, are you ready to go a little bit deeper?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's take this conversation behind the alleys and go deeper.
So I'm curious, in line with with whatever was happening in the last, I would say, couple years, right? The the I don't know the right word or the politically correct way to kind of package this question. All
Hmm.
the negative things that we see out there, um, from your perspective, you decided that turning point in your life, like you mentioned, was seeing that when you were in the scouts, like you needed that protection, to do, you would think, basic things that no one should be threatening you, planting a tree and doing something in the public community and things of that nature. That should be a not even in the same conversation or line of thought as violence or stuff like that.
Right.
And then you committing your life to protecting us in the community with all this stuff that's been going on. How have you kind of taken that in and continue the line of thought of, hey, you know what, despite of this, like whatever's happening out there, with
Hmm.
all this, like, against uh, law enforcement and things of that nature, what was it that kind of led you to say, you know what, I'm going to keep doing this, I'm going to go even deeper and run for council to be able to
Hmm.
serve my own community, not only putting my life on the line for one community, but also
Hmm.
serving my community that I live in and that my family is in? Maybe you can unpack that for us a little bit.
And so I look at it and I can't speak for police officers all over the country and everywhere, but my experience in policing, I've never experienced racism or a racist police officer. I've never experienced or witnessed any type of police brutality. What I have witnessed is officers, men and women serving as police officers, doing an amazing job caring for the cities that they work in, and that's not highly uh, it's not covered by the media. It's not covered unless and now in these days in social media, officers are filming themselves, like helping other people. But the, social media wasn't big when was a brand new officer, and I saw police officers hand money to help with tow truck fees or give a family money for food or toys. And police officers have an, I guess, an instinctual need to help people, but they go above and beyond. And I've witnessed countless acts of caring for your neighborhood or caring for someone else. And like I said, those human connections are so impactful when you think about it, because there's no incentive. It's not like you get a pay raise for helping 10 people, or you get an award for helping 20 people. It's that instinctual need to want to help. And being a public servant, you're not there for to make money. And that's just the basis of it. If I went and started a business, I could probably become a successful businessman with the skills and abilities I have. But I enjoy what I do, and serving people and helping and building those connections. And that's what's impactful to me. And I've seen that. I know the truth, what's out there. And I study case law. I study, new technology. I study trends in law enforcement. And people in impoverished neighborhoods or gang infested neighborhoods, they like the police. They do. And they welcome their presence, and they need those services. And when you talk about defunding, and the most important programs get defunded, those are your victim advocacy programs, your sex predator programs, your gang enforcement programs, or reentry programs. All those get cut to fund the police officers. Most city budgets revolve around police and fire services and community services, like public works and community services. So when someone says that they want to defund, they don't realize the impact that that's going to have on the people who live in that neighborhood. Those people, a lot of people who are crying out for defunding don't live in those neighborhoods. And it's hard to make decisions for people who aren't impacted. If let's say if a neighborhood said, well, we really don't like the police in this neighborhood, okay, then maybe you won't dedicate so many resources to that specific neighborhood, or find out what the real problem is by talking to the people in that specific neighborhood. And officers, and what I challenge my students and even people watching, how much do you know about your local police department? Do you know any of their names? Do you talk to them at community events? Do you go to their open house? Do you know what they're doing as far as fundraising? There's a ton of fundraising that goes for the Special Olympics or breast cancer awareness, or different community organizations. Like here in Chino, they partner up with You Choose. They partner up with Chino Neighborhood House. And people don't realize that that's happening in the community, that there's a lot of great work that police departments are doing. And community policing is not a new concept. It's been around since the late 70s, and it's always improving. And police departments are always trying to build that connection with people in the community. So I don't believe a lot of the stuff that the media puts out. And when police officers do wrong, they should be held accountable, and their police departments should be held accountable when they do wrong. When they violate policy, when they violate the law, they should be held accountable. I'm all for that. But as far as the relationship, that's something that we all have to work on, is building that connection.
Thank you so much for unpacking that for us and for our listeners. I think for me, seeing all this happen, and we were stuck at home, right? We were on lockdown, and we were seeing all
Yeah.
this things transpire right in front of our faces, like every single night, different things happening and things of that nature. And my kids, I have 4 kids. We're all watching this on TV. And I was born in the Philippines. I came here at a young age, but I've gone back and forth. And I've personally seen law enforcement from a different perspective. For me
Hmm.
here, I've seen the great things that our law enforcement were doing, but back, in my home country, I've seen how the stigma of having the police was looked at differently. A lot of the things that a lot of people are complaining about
Hmm.
here I saw over there, where you
Right.
had the corruption, you had the
Mhm.
like it was almost like it was a thing, right? If you got pulled over, um, I'm sure maybe if I have countrymen that would listen to this episode, they would not appreciate me talking about this, but you would get pulled over in your driver's license in your wallet. When you handed your driver's license, you insert bill there, right? And then because you knew that, oh, and that would sort of let you out of that situation.
Right.
But it wasn't more so the fear of like just getting away with it, right? But it was more like, what else could happen to me in this
Right.
interaction? It could go deeper, right? And that's what
Right.
we were just trying to avoid, just to be able to go on our way, because the majority of the time your interaction with law enforcement is for basic things, right? Like making the wrong turn,
Right.
beating the traffic light, and things of that nature. It's not like you went committed like a major crime. So if it's a
Mhm.
small thing like that, you just abide by like what it is the officer is asking you to do, and everything theoretically should be
Right.
fine. And then when, like I said, as I was seeing these things on TV, I was telling the stories to my kids, like, oh, like there's a lot of misconception here. I think you need to be able to read deeper into the situation, because
Right.
what people are crying about, you need to listen to that, because they have
Right.
the reasons for feeling how they feel. You can't
Right.
minimize that. Oh, like they feel a certain way. It's not
Right.
that they're lying, it's just how they authentically feel, because that's
Right.
how I felt when I had law enforcement interactions in my country. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you have to look at it from the other side as well. And now, more, I was just reading an article this morning that a lot of those people that were calling for defunding the police are now calling for, like, actually, I take that back. I don't want to
Yeah.
defund the police, because we need more police presence in these areas, that because the crime rate is going up. I mean, I
Right.
didn't realize, like, for the life of me, being in the 80s, 90s, right? You see the crime always going down. Like it's just
Right.
the natural trajectory. But
Right.
now it's starting to take up, which is fascinating. And if you correlate it directly, it's like, oh, because, like, there's this all this, like, defund and all these things that are out there.
Right.
So it's a tough, touchy subject, depending on which aisle you're looking at it from. And like I said, everybody has their own opinion, has their own perspective on things. But I really appreciate you kind of unpacking it from your perspective.
Yeah, and want to make a couple points. And there's an organization called Breaking Barriers United, from Ryan Tillman. He's a corporal with Chino PD, and he's bridging that gap between police and the community in a fun. He makes it in a fun way, and he puts people in different scenarios. Like you said, it could be a simple traffic stop, and just understanding our procedures of how we do things. We get paid to ask questions. We get paid to look at people. We get paid to observe crime and write tickets for violations and arrest people. That's our job, regardless of, you know, it doesn't matter like what political party you belong to. Your job is to go write tickets and write and arrest people who commit crimes. So the overall goal is the same. And I really like what Corporal Tillman's doing, because he's reducing that fear, building those connections, and explaining to people, hey, you know what? It looks bad, but it's lawful. It's They could have done something better. Those are, and it's learning and educating people on what we do. And like I mentioned, fear in your communities. We don't, as a police officer, we don't want people to be afraid of us, and that's a perspective I want to bring to that. People should be involved. They should learn about their local government. They should learn about their local police department and their fire department, and really know who they are. So when they see things that are projected out on the media, they could take a different perspective and say, you know what, that's not what's happening in my community. That's not the right story. And now you're seeing social media becoming big with police departments, because they're learning how to tell their own story and not leaving it to someone who doesn't live in that community. It's always better to create your own content and put out your own messages. And that's what police departments are focusing on now. And even in a council, as a community services commissioner, and my ambitions to be a councilman, I want people to get involved in local government. There's a ton of ways to get involved that don't require, having $100 million. you could get involved in your community, and people need to really understand like what it means, not shy away from these interactions with police, not shy away from going to a council meeting and just learning about it.
Wow, absolutely. Thank you so much. I really love that conversation that we were just having there. I wanted to ask, for you being, being part of the community for a really long time, through your, through your job as a career as a police officer, and now, going into council. What does being part of the Main Street community mean the most to you?
As a future councilman or candidate, some of my goals are to establish a relationships with the businesses, and using or not using connecting with organizations like Thinking Local and Behind Main Street. These are connections that help get your message across, but I'm able to build these connections, talk to people, and find out what issues they're dealing with in their little community or their business community, because they may have issues that may have a solution that the city can help them out with or connect them with a different resource. So I've studied the economic development plan for the city of Chino, and I've talked to a lot of business owners, and I'm always looking and scanning for issues in the community and understanding their impacts or how they can uh, be affected by council policies or quality of life issues. And so I have a variety of different goals that I have with building these relationships and bringing businesses into the city. I think that's important too, because during the pandemic, you saw that shift from, retail stores and service providers to everything shifting to online. And what that's done is taken away jobs from our community. So now you see a shift to the the entrepreneurs coming up in the community, and they realized that there was a market that didn't need a storefront, that didn't need to necessarily have a whole warehouse. But on the other hand too is that as a council person, we need to encourage businesses to move into these vacant businesses, so that it becomes a blight issue after a while, and if we're not getting these big mainstream anchor stores, then let's convert those into office spaces where entrepreneurs can have an office front and have a place to work and meet. And let's repurpose some of those areas for people to reach their goals. If they need storage space, or if they just need a place to meet clients, or a place to set up all their computers, or have like a media room, like where you could set up your own little studio and you have all your sound equipment and your video. You could go video content, places where people could go and they don't need to leave the city. So that's that. I think the relationship between council and Behind Main Street and Thinking Local are important connections to have, to not only promote and advertise the city itself, but to brag about our reputation to other cities. Hey, we have a safe city, we have nice roads, we have access to all these freeways, we have our own police department that keeps protects your property and educates you how to protect your property. And there's so many ideas that like I have, but there's great things that are already being done. So it's just promoting those great things that are being done, like with Thinking Local. That's awesome. I did it for the first time the other day, and it's so easy, it's effortless, and it's just teaching people that how easy it is important, and how much of an impact they can have, with crowdfunding. And Thinking Local is kind of like a crowdfunding concept, but it's simple, it's easy, and it helps people, so, and businesses.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that was one of the things, when I talked to the founder, of Thinking Local, and I got involved in the project and things of that nature. It was really the biggest thing for me was it was able to not only generate local shopping, but also make it sustainable enough that instead of discounting your product as a business, you're paying it forward to an
Right.
organization, to our schools, to our kids that benefit and need
Yeah.
these funding the most, right? Because
Mhm.
like the price of goods are skyrocketing. I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's either the price of good is skyrocketing or you're getting shrinkage. Like I go to Costco, and when My wife is the one that go to Costco, but I'm the one that sometimes carries it from the car, and you feel like, oh, this paper towel is lighter than it used to be, things of that nature. But with that
Right.
said, us being able to spend in our local community, and that's why I was so excited to have you on the show. I think we've had this sort of similar conversation, like even last year we were chatting, probably like towards the end of last year, even before I thought of even doing this podcast. And yeah, you're correct, in being able to build those things within our community. Just you talking about it, it gets me so excited because we don't have a space here in Chino, in the whole Chino Valley, including Chino Hills, where I am living right now, where we can have a space where home-based businesses like mine and a lot of other ones that sprouted up after the pandemic or during the pandemic, we have a
Right.
space to collaborate with each other. Because imagine if we had a space where we all could co-work together, like we serve different businesses, but imagine having like a lawyer, a finance person, a marketing person like myself, other different types of business. They're able to collaborate
Right.
with different things that they're weak at. Like that would
Right.
create so much synergy within the business community, and hopefully
Yeah.
we're able to graduate our business into businesses that can hire more people, right?
Right.
Bring in more investment within the community and stuff like that. And we live here, we spend our money here locally. So that's what
Right.
that's why it's so important for the projects that you had mentioned. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
thankful.
I think it's important for people to appreciate too the fact that these businesses are here in the city and they chose this city to build their businesses. And you build relationships with people that who have businesses. Like I call people by their first names and they know who I am and they recognize me. And that's that whole Chino feel, like that you have that small town feel where people know your name, they recognize you, you get a friendly smile, and people know who you are. And I think creating that space, whether it's from a city perspective, whether it has to do with permits or zoning or working with the business owners, is having an opportunity to let people know like you could do your business here. We have this location where you could rent this office space out, and even have, like, I'm big on art, like local artists and musicians. They have a lot of equipment. They need they could create like a sound studio somewhere where they can rent time here or do something here. There's all kinds of different opportunities. You see the warehouses opening up and the logistics companies, but let's open up a space for more professionals and entrepreneurs, and to have to start their shops here and build their clients here, their clientele here. And it's going to resolve a lot of different issues too with even people's commute. Look at how long I drive, 30 miles to work now. It would be a conflict of interest if I worked for Chino PD and was a council member. I can't do that. But for other people, they don't have to look for job opportunities elsewhere if they can start their business here and uh, get to know the businesses here, or try to, like, one of my goals too is to speak with business owners to offer internships for young people or even adults who are looking to change careers, so that you can start thinking local. And it cut down on commute times, cut down on emissions. One of the big things from the new parks and facilities master plan for Chino was to create new trails, paved trails, to help with like bike travel or electric scooters, or just to get around the city safely. So these are things that are already not only conceptualized but are in the master plans for the city. So I think just educating people and letting them know, like, you could get around the city, you could set up shop here, you could open up a church, you could open up, you know, a place to study. You could set up little tutoring programs, or whatever business you have. We have a variety of businesses, and you don't need to go to other cities. You could spend your money here, set up your shop here.
Absolutely. I think that's the most fascinating thing about what you're saying is, there's so much opportunity within the city itself just for you to build your dream here, right? Not
Right.
have to travel to LA. I mean, I commuted a lot. My corporate career commuted a lot, to Los Angeles and things of that nature. But being able to, stay here. But on the other hand, also like during the pandemic, I think we've 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 almost in the past accepted that the globalization of the world meant that we had to buy our goods from somewhere far away. But I think
Right.
what the pandemic has, it forced us to kind of rethink our priorities and think more locally, hyper locally even, right? To be
Right.
able to think like, hey, I can, like, I remember going to Billy's farm right on I always forget the street, but right there by Joey's barbecue, to go
Right.
get my eggs, during like the pandemic time, because everywhere else where we were out of eggs and stuff like that.
Right.
So imagine if we just did that, like make it a thing. Like, okay, well, Sunday, let's go grab our eggs here. Let's go get our dairy over here and stuff like that. I think that's something lost on us with all the globalization that's happened. But I think
Right.
now is a time for us to refocus and reshift our efforts to be able to be a more sustainable community, and being
Right.
able to do these shop local movements and things of that nature, which I think
Yeah.
we talked about, that city of Chino doesn't have, or not yet at least, has a shop local program, which I think it would be great once you're fortunate enough to be able to sit on that council. It's something that you hopefully can bring to the table
Oh
for
yeah. No,
for our community.
definitely. I think it's important to support people from a city perspective in whatever way we can, whether it's, you know, setting up craft fairs or, the pop-up events that people are having just so they could come out and if that's their little side hustle or their full-time business, come out and offer that to people so that they start, people don't realize how important it is when you buy a product and support their business or repost something, and not only for their own dreams or ambitions for their business, but you're supporting someone else's family in the meantime, where instead of buying on Amazon, and I do use Amazon, but I'm just saying, if it takes an intentional effort to spend your money here in the city and really enjoy to what we have. And that's an important thing that from a council perspective, creating that, working with our community services department and creating, events where you have vendors and you have people locally and young entrepreneurs as well, coming out and selling their products. And it's very intentional. It has to be an intentional effort and something that everyone can do when they need something and be able to shop local. I think that's very important.
Yeah, for sure. And I just had an interview that's coming out, that I did last week, that's coming out on Monday. She bakes cookies. She's a pastry chef that bakes cookies. She's the part of the cottage industry, which bloomed during I think the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Because there's a lot more
Mhm.
of not just like the service type of home-based business, but also these type of kitchen idea business. I was working with another
Right.
potential one where uh a client that's, they do like grab and go meals and things of that nature. So, and
Right.
I had her on the podcast a few weeks back, and born out of the almost losing her catering company, she was able to pivot and do grab and go meals and stuff like that for the offices
Yeah.
and things of that nature, which bore a new concept, a new idea that is out here
Right.
in the community, that's able to serve the community. So being able to, yeah,
Yeah.
do those pop-ups and things of that nature would certainly allow a lot of these businesses to graduate to think about a bigger trajectory to their business.
Right. Yeah. A space to grow and, you know, be prosperous, and I think that's important, just to be able to support themselves. And you look at the real estate market, and from a council perspective too, we want to ensure that there's a variety of different housing elements available for people for any income or education level, that people, whether you're working logistics or you're a lawyer, you can afford to live in the city and meet your housing needs, meet your service, your food needs, everything, your entertainment needs, and keep that all local, because that money gets put back into the city through our sales taxes, and all that money goes back to the general fund, which pays for our police services, our fire, our community services. And when things go wrong, the city, when I say wrong, I mean like issues come up. The city is very responsive, and that's what I really like about the city of Chino, is that they're very responsive on issues. If there's something broken or something that needs to be fixed or something's not accessible, the city's always working on projects. They're listening to citizens' concerns because all in all, we're all neighbors. You know, I don't use the word constituent. You will never hear me use that or refer to someone as a constituent because we're all neighbors. We all live in this city. We all shop. We all drive on the same roads. We shop in the same places. We're neighbors. We're not anything different. I'm just a neighbor who wants to be more involved in the city and be part of that policy making process or team. And I think we have a great council. We have people who are dedicated and a great mayor and the leadership in our city departments. And I think that's going to attract businesses to want to set up shop in Chino. Our reputation and who we are as a city will people will think twice about leaving to set up shop somewhere else because it's an attractive city to build your shop here and start your business here. And people should help each other. Just spread the word. Like, hey, my friend has this business. Shop if you need coffee. Grab your coffee here. Go eat here. Support their business. When it's supporting your business means spending money. You got to eat. You
Yeah.
got to buy things. And if you're intentional about it, and if you have to pay a dollar more, okay, you pay a dollar more, but you're supporting that family's business. And I
Yeah,
think
with
that's
gas nowadays, that dollar more is not that much.
I know the gas is crazy. I just spent $110 on my truck.
Oh my god! Oh my gosh! I wanted to ask you: was there maybe a specific community leader influence that you had in your life?
A specific community leader in my life.
Yeah, that you saw like growing up, or maybe even more recently that you kind of look up to as a community servant.
I think my Boy Scout leader. I know I refer a lot to about Boy Scouts, but
Yeah.
Phil was a he was a he was a good he is a good man. He's a good family man. He was involved in his community. He didn't even have kids in the Boy Scout troop.
Oh wow.
And the people don't realize that when you take leadership positions, you're dedicating a lot of time into whatever you're doing. And as I got older, I appreciated the fact that he spent so much time mentoring um, kids like myself and my brother and other people. So people who are um, take on those mentorship opportunities, it's impactful. It's meaningful for because people aren't looking for recognition or anything. They just want to give and help. And even during the pandemic, like I saw people donate food and money, and it was amazing. Like just to see like people really care. They're not posting it on their social media. They're not asking for any type of recognition. They're just doing it. So when you see people and you meet people like that who are doing it and from the kindness of their heart, you know, that's very heartwarming, I guess you'd say, or very impactful. And there's a lot of great people in the city. And I saw it during the pandemic more and I appreciate it more because our seniors were lonely. A lot of the senior community was very lonely, and people, uh, delivered food and care packages and sent little notes. And, I think that people don't see that. But when you start getting involved in the city and you start learning names and people and how they really do care, and I met people like Joe and Lisa Fraga. The Fragas are very involved in the community. Sam Sousa, and all these different people who are doing great things in the community, and they're not doing it for a humble brag. They're not doing it for any kind of publicity. They're just doing it because they care. And there's so many different organizations that care about helping people, whether it's food assistance, whether it's clothing, whether it's counseling services, whether it's homeless outreach. That's a community. That's how communities are built, by people who set the example and take the lead and do something. They say something, they do something. They're not just sitting in the sidelines complaining about, oh, why are there so many homeless people? Well, what do we offer as far as helping people out? So that learning about those organizations and getting involved, that's why I'm very passionate about advocating for people to volunteer and just get involved. Spend your money here in the city, support the local organizations, donate, Better yet, volunteer when you can, share a post, even like a social media post, keep the analytics going. That way the social media post doesn't die out. You know, that's important for businesses, for the community. And I think that going back to your original question, people like Phil, who impacted me as a young kid, there needs to be more people, or there are people like that in our community that we need to, promote and connect them with, you know, other kids or people on young entrepreneurs, teaching them how to run a business, how to make money, how to do your taxes, how to do that. So you need people like that who are care about the community.
Fascinating. You know, when did you decide to really get involved in becoming a community servant?
So after my master's program, I did my master's program in through Cal State Northridge. It was a cohort here in the city of Chino at the University Hall. So during that cohort program is that when I really started to study public policy and understand, how local governments and, at the city level, the county level, the state level, national level, and how policy is created. And that really sparked an interest in doing government type work, or, I, I'm not even talking politics. I'm talking like policy, and really studying and understanding how decisions are made in a city really sparked my interest. And I've always liked politics. I've always liked, learning and listening. But when you actually like study it and you read what and recognize what good policy, what bad policy looks like, and when things go wrong, how the different solutions, that's what really sparked my interest in trying to get involved in the policy side, and reading the books, and listening to the professors and their message about building good policy for a city. That's what really sparked my interest. And then when the community services position opened up, I applied and I interviewed, and that opened up a new door for me to really get involved in the city and meet those connectors in the city and the people doing the great work in the different organizations, and really dive deep into what's going on in the city, really understand the pulse of this community and the issues, and listen to people and talk to people. And then when the council opportunity came up, and even learning about council member Hargrove, he was a great man. He did a lot of great work, and those are big shoes to fill. And Walt Pocock's doing a great job filling in that position. But with Mark's passing, that opened up a different opportunity. And that's when I said, okay, well, I'm not going to let this opportunity go. This is something that I'm ready to do, and I'm dedicated to doing it. And talking with my family and working, it's a lot of work. Running a campaign is one thing, being a council member is a whole different thing. So it's learning how to campaign and create content, get involved, and fundraise and do all this stuff. It's just a lot of different moving parts.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, we talk about a lot about business and the conversations that we've been having. You being out there, as a police officer, and being involved in the city at the city level, what are some of the challenges that you've seen out there for Main Street businesses?
I think retaining employees would be a big thing. I think with the pandemic, you see a shift from, like I said, retail to logistics. And because Chino is such a central location, I think your workforce is also changing. So people who traditionally would work for logistics companies or um, retail companies, those jobs are shifting away, to online. So you have to change your workforce has to adapt to those changes as technology and takes over a lot of different types of jobs. Young people, or people trying to change careers, need to look at, one, what's going to get replaced by a robot someday, and also what job opportunities are there for that career field here in my city. And Chino has a lot of different opportunities, whether you're interested in the medical field, whether, we have legal offices, we have, barbershops, we have a ton of restaurants, and not a whole ton of entertainment, businesses, but someone who would be interested in doing that, that would be something that I think should be promoted. Even childcare centers, to help people who are working, build those next to schools and next to business centers and shopping centers. So I think your the worries of your average employee, as far as commuting, as far as sustainability of your business, or having employment, those are all concerns. I think now, as we're shifting out of the pandemic thing phase, and that was a real shock to businesses because they had to shift, and then now people aren't really comfortable shopping in your traditional brick and mortar, whether they don't like the store's policies or they don't you know it's easier just to order it on an app and have someone deliver it. So it's changed. The AI and the technology has changed the way people work and the way people consume. So I think that by promoting businesses and actually having those face-to-face interactions means a lot. So when you go to a restaurant, you're like, hey, they have great customer service, they make really good drinks, really good food, and you'll return to that business because you enjoy that face-to-face interaction rather than just ordering on Uber Eats and eating at home. So I think your workforce has changed a lot, and I think businesses are worried about setting up a brick and mortar shop because people aren't really going out. So promoting businesses, I think, will um, help bridge that gap and promote. And as a council member, it's important for us to make our city as attractive as we can. Go out and meet potential business owners looking for a place to set up shop. Come to Chino, come to this city, and there's a lot of great opportunities to give back to your community, to get involved. And I think promoting that sense of belonging, that these companies, you're part of the community, you're not just selling a product or service, you're part of the community, and you can give back to local organizations. You could be involved in community events, you could sponsor local or events or organizations as far as like fundraising. And there's a lot of different opportunities to get involved. So I think inviting those business owners and getting them involved, they want to. Everyone wants to get involved. Everyone in some way wants to give back, whether it's donation in kind, whether it's money, or hey, you know what, I'm gonna pay my employee for the day to go volunteer at this event. It could be a variety of ways. So I think that in this position and in council, it's important to recognize the issues that the businesses are dealing with and trying to resolve those issues from either a policy level or uh, a process level, like such as getting permits or licensing, streamline those processes so that it's easy for businesses to come and set up shop and they're not running through loopholes and a year worth of waiting for permits. Streamline those processes. I don't know if that's happening, but being able to make sure we're addressing the needs of businesses so that they want to come here, and then in their business community invite others, like, hey, come set up shop in Chino. We've got nice roads, safe. We got a lot of parks. We got child care centers for your employees. We have a police department who's engaging in protecting your business. Those are things that you could promote at a city level. And then there's also even letting people know about the county building those partnerships with the county. They have the Office of Economic Development. The state has the Office of Small Business Opportunities or something like that, where they help people with some type of funding or technical advice, and to be able to have the tools that they need and the resources they need. So I think just being that connector, that salesperson, I'm going into Malcolm Gladwell here, but being all of those different positions and really promoting your city, being proud of your city is important.
Most definitely. I think that, like the biggest thing that you said there is consumer behavior is changing, right?
Hmm.
And businesses also need to adapt to the ever changing times. All the instead of just kind of living in the past, like we clearly we were able to survive months just basically stuck at home. So we were
Yeah,
able to adapt. We're human beings that are we're bred, we evolved for millions of years to adapt, to
right.
survive. And now that we're coming back into this opening thing, I was telling my wife that I hope that at that time when when the ordering, the pickups and stuff like that grew for a lot of restaurants. Once
Mhm.
they're able to open the doors, instead of it going back to just in person dining, they were able to maintain the business, the order business, plus the sit-in business, and then you're able
Right.
to double that. I mean, salaries are increasing, all of
Mhm.
the cost of goods is increasing, margins are shrinking for a lot of the
Right.
business and stuff like that. So I think it's just a matter of being able to adapt and change. And one of the things, me being like my last corporate job, I was head of marketing, so studying human consumer behavior was part of being
Mhm.
head of marketing, right? um and one of the things that I've seen is not just the consumer behavior, but employee behaviors have changed. They
Right.
like working for places, for small or large businesses that actually care about the community, not just
Right.
about not just about making the money. That's why the corporate social responsibility push in the space for larger corporations has already taking huge leaps. But for the
Yeah.
local businesses, there's more that we could be able to do. It doesn't, like you mentioned, it doesn't always need to be like doing handouts or volunteering. It could be a combination of things, whatever works
Yeah.
for your business. But your employees need to see that you are involved in the community, that you are doing something for their
Right.
community. And a lot of times, like in working in startup now, I listen to a lot of pitches and things of that nature. One VC guy that I follow, he's talking about how do you take, me being in the online space and software and stuff like that. He was asked the question, how do we compete as far as engineering? How do we compete with Google and Facebook? Because
Mhm.
Google and Facebook, you cannot compete with them as far as money is concerned. They will pay the most for engineers, and they will take
Right.
them out of their primes. Basically, by the time they go back to the job market, they're either super rich already because they made so much money that they're going to go
Right.
retire, live in Costa Rica somewhere. They're not going to go
Mhm.
back into the pool,
Right.
or they're going to go start up their own company, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to choose. You have to attract. Those are the mercenaries. So you have to not attract the mercenary. If you're a smaller company, you have to attract the missionary people, the employees and
Right.
workforce that believe in the mission of that small business, whether it is to serve the best coffee here in
Right.
Chino Valley, whether it's
Yeah.
to give the best haircuts here in Chino Valley.
Right.
You have to be able to come up with a mission that your business is involved in and make that part of your brand. Because a
Right.
lot of the small businesses, they don't think about that. They just think, I'm going to open my door, I'm going to do my service. But there has to be a lot more to be able
Right.
to kind of attract the consumer, but also retain those workforce that are working for you. So just want to
Right.
kind of tag that into what you were saying.
Yeah, I think people, when they spend money and they know that there's a meaning behind the money that they spend, like you said, when they give back to the community, people will most likely buy or support that business that's giving back to the community because it's meaningful, and people seek that higher meaning in what they're doing. So if you're buying, let's say, a burger or something, but you know that that business gives back to the community, that's cool. That's meaningful because these cities, these businesses want to give back, and the ones that do, that's cool. And then the ones that don't, let's get them on board, and just every little bit helps, and that's where that whole crowdfunding even concept comes in. Every little bit counts, whether it's a few dollars here, $20 here, $30 there, or a dollar here, a dollar there, and a dollar from 100 different people. That money is a lot for a nonprofit organization, or someone running a business here in the city. So giving back to the local businesses, and then watching those businesses contribute back to the community is very impactful.
Absolutely. I just wanted to shout out. I was so happy when my barber, they were in Pomona, moved to Chino. So I go to Chino now to get my haircut. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. First, it's closer to me, but
Yeah.
also it's part of our area. So it's always a good thing. Um, my next question is, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? But before you answer that, let's take a quick break.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thinkin' Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission is to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact in the local community with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting local.com. And we're back. digging for gold on the Behind Main Street podcast.
So, Greg, if you could have one superpower, what would that be?
Superpower. That's a tough question. How about seeing into the future? Is that a superpower? Is that
Oh,
qualifying?
oh yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
then that's something I would like. I would like to know. Like, I would like to see into the future. That would be
That's
a cool
fascinating.
superpower. Right?
Absolutely. Well, in your opinion, what would you say is the a crucial or the most crucial personality trait that you see that a community servant or community leader like yourself needs to have to be able to make the most impact?
Being a good communicator, I think, would be the most important trait or skill that you can have as a public servant, or even like a business owner, is being able to communicate, to develop a message and be able to share that message with people is probably the most important trait, because you have to be able to not only, you're not branding yourself as a public servant, you're branding your city, and using that business concept in a city, you're branding your city and you're representing your city and serving your neighbors and making policy decisions on projects, and the way money's spent in the community is being able to communicate, to listen to people's concerns and being able to explain to them the reason why a certain decision was made, or if it's not a council issue, being able to help people go through that process of getting their concerns addressed, whether it's a police issue or whether it's a school district issue, and helping people of all walks of life, being able to have a way to communicate with you, and then you have a message and you're ready. And even as a council candidate, I'm studying things from emissions to traffic control to water, to all these different concepts, so that I'm able to answer their questions when people ask, because sometimes people don't know and what council does, and they want to know, or they have a complaint that they've maybe never told anyone about their complaint or concern, and they see you and they talk to you, and being able to say, okay, well, that's a school district issue, you should contact the school district and speak to them about that issue. Or if they have an issue where they have a need, I could say, well, I know this business because I've talked to the owner and I know what they do, why don't you check out their business, and try to create solutions for the problems. But communication is number one. Being able to speak well, being able to write, being able to express yourself on social media. That that's all the different types of communication that you could go on for hours just talking about how important communication is.
Absolutely. In life, what would you consider so far has been your biggest failure, and what did that teach you?
I don't know how to say. I don't know about if that's a failure or not. But my flaw is that I think I have taken on too much without um, I have to let things go. So like when I do counsel, I have to let go of something in my life, whether it's teaching or whether it's volunteering as much in these different organizations, because in all, it's time away from your family. And my family is important to me and they're my inspiration, my motivation. And I think that there's just not enough hours in a day. So taking on this new role as a council member is going to be a lot. So I have to let go of certain things in my life. And teaching is, I'm passionate about teaching, but I'm going to have to teach to my community in that new role as a council member, and teaching them everything I know about being able to be successful and create that path in their life so that they could be successful. They don't have to necessarily be a police officer. I've mentored youth and teens, and it's all about telling them, you know, how to reach their goals, and people, so I think it's finding that work life balance has always been an issue. And sometimes I jump on a project and I don't even ask my wife, like, hey, do the kids even have a game that day, or what's going on that day? And I've already committed myself to go to this community event, or have a meeting. So I'm in meetings all the time, even in a campaign role. I'm in meetings and doing stuff. So I guess that's a flaw of mine. I think that I'm maybe overly ambitious, and I'm not trying to like humble brag or anything, but it's just that you've spread yourself thin, and that's something that will change. As I get into council, I'll be there's such a time commitment for council that I'll have to let those opportunities, and not opportunities, those positions, go. So that way I have my full-time job and counsel and my family. I'm not doing the teaching is time consuming, creating content and creating lesson plans and engaging with students. So that's a part of me that I've already realized that I'm going to have to give up because I have to maintain that balance and also keep my family involved in everything I do at council. I want them to be part of it, everything that I do, because um, I want them to see what dad's doing. I want them to see and know what, I have teenagers, but I want them to see like how to get involved in their community and be inspired, by inspired to give back to their community as well when they grow up. They've been born and raised here in Chino. So they've lived here their whole life. And when you take a different role like that, you really appreciate your city and being proud of your city. But back to your question, I kind of drifted off. But yeah, I think that would be my biggest. I guess time management would be my biggest flaw. I don't know if I have a failure that I can think of though. But
Yeah, that's
that's a tough
perfectly
question.
fine. I think you brought up a lot of great points there. I think being a dad, also for you being a husband, a police officer, all the hats that you're trying to wear.
Yeah,
There's always something's got to give, right? You
yeah,
can't be the best at everything. I mean,
yeah.
we're human. We could do so many things. I was talking to a friend of mine. You might have heard his podcast interview. Is Andrew Mendez from the city of Azusa. He's currently a council member there.
I did watch that one.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay,
did
yeah.
watch that one.
So he's a good friend of mine. We're Freemason brothers. I'm out of Glendora, and I've known him for so long. And I knew him before he had, I always saw him as gonna be like involved in the city. I always said you're gonna be the mayor of Azusa one day. And now he's a council member, but he has 5 kids. He does
He
just
does
like
real estate,
yourself.
right?
He does so much, and I couldn't figure out how you guys can do everything that you're trying to do. But like you said, it's being able to kind of pick and choose your battles, giving up
Right,
something because you see a different value that you can bring on another thing. So I think that's the
right,
best way to be
right.
able to do it.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. Yeah, then that's exactly what's going to happen. So
Yeah,
I'm all in, and I'm dedicated to not only my campaign but to serving my community in this role.
that's gonna be exciting. Is there something or someone that you turn to when you feel stuck?
Oh, definitely my wife. Yeah, my wife is. We were joking about it at dinner last night because she was saying, you know what, I think I'm going to run against you, and
Oh,
she goes, I'll
oh.
probably win. She goes, I'm going to probably win because I know more people than you, and people like me. And I go, yeah, you know what, that's probably true. You probably would beat me, but
Don't do
my
that.
wife, just like any marriage, marriage can be difficult, but she's always been, especially being married to a police officer, because we have crazy schedules, and she's running around taking care of the kids. She's a real estate agent, so she's busy with her business and balancing everything. You know, she also gives great advice. She's been someone I've always had, look over my social media posts or read something I wrote, or critique me and give me advice. So and that comes from the way she was brought up too. And her parents are very um, giving, and they are very caring people. So sometimes if I'm a little harsh, she knows how to bring me back down and kind of like be a better person. So she's always someone that I've that's been impactful in my life. I mean, we've been together for 20 something years, 23 years, I think. So
Wow.
it's like, it's a long time, and she knows me better than anyone else. So she knows when I'm frustrated, and She knows when I'm confused. She knows everything about me. So that's someone that when I struggle, then I'm able to talk to and kind of, work through whatever issue.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think, like, yeah, our significant others know us so well. I know my wife sometimes, like, I come home, I'm trying to hide something from her, and she's like, don't even, don't even, like, what are you talking about? Like, don't say that. Like, just your face alone, I know that you're trying to hide something. Like, don't
Yeah.
even, like, she'll call me out and stuff like that. And it's fascinating how the dynamic of that works, because it allows you
Yeah.
to be the person that you want to become because they're so supportive,
Hmm.
but also, it, like you
Right.
mentioned, it kind of keeps you grounded, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the most fascinating thing. So shout out to our significant others.
Yes, definitely.
Are there any other resources that help you get through struggles other than maybe a person?
My faith, just reading and listening to different, and not only in my church, but like different leaders of other churches, and just listening to their messages and how they get through issues in life. And like I attend the mayor's prayer breakfast every month, where we meet and pray for our city leaders, and just meeting these men and women who are so dedicated to their faith is inspirational. And listening to how, listening not only their concerns, because they do have concerns as well too. The I guess, well, instead of saying priests and pastors, that our spiritual leaders, they have great advice, and they have this calming kind of aura to them, where it doesn't matter what religion you are, you can go to these people and talk to them, and they just have great advice, just even on a personal, and even on a city level, the way they care about our mayor and our city leaders. It's it like I said, it just hits your heart different, and you could go to these people, and I've met so many that you just talk to them, or you give them a hug, and you just feel, or they pray on you, and those prayers are just like, it's just so impactful. It's just, it's hard to explain, but it's necessary that people in general, have someone that they can go to, and just even have them pray for you, and that's really impactful. And it's such an amazing opportunity to go to these mayor prayer breakfasts, or talk to your church leader, and the they're just people who are dedicated to the faith, but also giving advice. And I think that's very important to your own personal growth, is to be able to listen. And change doesn't happen right away. Sometimes it takes time, it takes studying, it takes listening. And I listen to a lot of the podcast, and the videos from different local churches. I started following all the different local churches, and I think listening to their messages too kind of sparks something like, wow, that was really cool what he said. So branching out to different faiths and different churches is cool too, because you just get such great advice, and just really it opens you up to so many different things about yourself, whether it's a personality flaw, or whether it's the way you interact with people, or just practicing faith in general. They just give such great advice that you could really associate with. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. What would you say has been your biggest, like, aha moment in life?
I would say when my daughter was first born, I think that now that, I have two children now, but when my children were born, it was kind of like a new role in my life that I knew I had to fulfill. And I had to be a good example to these children, and protect them, and provide for them, and work as a team with my wife, and agree on how we're going to parent our children, and how we're going to spend our money. And for years, we made decisions, for her to stay at home and raise the kids while I worked. And now she's working and doing really great in her real estate business. But it's that was an aha moment for both of us, because we knew we had a new role in life, and it wasn't so much about our dreams or ambitions. It was about providing and caring for these two children, and we want to give them all the skills and abilities and talents and everything that they can do to become successful, because they're going to make decisions on their own, and we need to be there to guide them throughout their lives. So that's an important role that you have to spend time and effort into learning how to do. And I'm able to share what I've learned about being a parent with people even I meet in as a police officer, or people I meet in the community, and just sharing just little advice, just this is how we parent our children. Or so I think that's a real big aha moment, was when we had our children.
Wow, that must be, not only fascinating but challenging, right? With your role, being a peace officer, working in law enforcement, and then having a family. Like I remember for me when I had my other kids, my first child, I guess I was younger. I had my first kid. I think I was 22, 23. So it wasn't as, you're not prepared, or so you don't know what you don't really know how to prepare for something like that, but at the
Right.
same time you're not as worried because you're still young. But when I had
Right.
my three other children, at my line of work, I traveled a lot. I was getting like panic attacks, anxiety, and things of that nature.
Uh-huh.
I can only imagine in your line of work, with your wife and stuff like that, like how nerve wracking that is every time you step out the door. Like that door closes, they hear your wife and your kids hear your
Uh,
car like leave the driveway and stuff like that. That must, and for you too, right? Like, being that parent that has to put a roof over your family's head, but
mhm.
at the same time also protecting the neighborhoods that you service.
Right.
I just can't imagine that, having to
Yeah.
go through something like that.
Yeah. When you think about it, it's kind of in a way selfish, because I'm creating that fear of, is dad going to come home or not? And if I worked in a different line of work, they wouldn't have that fear. And I think now they've adapted to it, but they know that I love what I'm doing at the same time. So it's kind of, it's that was my dream. And it's kind of like you're forcing that on your family. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of forcing them to have to deal with that element of what's going to happen, because you never know what's going to happen. You could work in the safest city in America, but there's crime everywhere, and you just never know when what God has planned for you, and you never know what's going to happen that day. So I think that's a something that kind of got pushed on my family, my career choice, and then even the schedules. If I work on a certain schedule, it may be good for my sleep, but not good for their schedules, because they don't see dad for the whole week. Because by the time I get home, they've already left for school. When I get home, they're asleep. And then, you sacrifice the scheduling, and then your wife or my wife has to do more work picking up the kids and running around. And it's a busy life. And I think everyone is in the same boat. And that's why I think that, um, not to drift too far off the question, but it's important, like an important perspective to have, is knowing that people are busy and they have different things that their families are worried about as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, if you could talk to your 18-year-old Greg self, what advice would you give him?
That's a funny question. 18-year-old Greg. So 18-year-old Greg wasn't really good about being fiscally responsible at that time. So 18-year-old Greg didn't have very good credit, because 18-year-old Greg made a lot of spend a lot of money. But that's changed. I have great credit. I'm fiscally responsible. My wife helps us out with all the managing the bills and everything. But 18-year-old Greg, and I think that most people don't think about credit until they're going to go out and purchase a home, or they don't think about how credit impacts you when you're going to go buy a car, or when you want to buy real things. So if I could have taught 18-year-old Greg how important credit was, and 18-year-old Greg how important it is to um, even focus in on your faith, I think that would have helped me out a lot. Um, you know, because people don't think about it. and you're busy in your college life and sports and having a girlfriend and working crazy hours. I used to work in an ambulance, so no, not at 18. That was before I worked in the ambulance. But yeah, that would be the best advice I could give 18-year-old Greg. Take care of that credit, be strong in your faith, and yeah, those are the two best things I could give 18-year-old Greg.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I think that that advice is applicable to a vast majority of 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
What would
Oh
you
yeah, for
say?
sure.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask what with your busy schedule, wearing many different hats, serving the community in a multifaceted way. What is your favorite productivity hack?
Okay, so I have a little phone mount in my car, and I have a phone mount in my shower. So
In your shower, okay? Tell us,
yeah,
tell
so
us
I
that.
I put on I put on a YouTube video, and
Okay.
I learned something. I use that time to learn something, and like the other day, I was listening to the U.S. Constitution, and it was a video of explaining the U.S. Constitution, and just studying things in on my way to work. How, whether it's like I so I'm always learning. So that's my productivity hack. So I just listen. I don't use that as dead time on my commute to work. I'm learning something as I go to work. I just put it on my phone mount and I listen on my AirPods, and that helps with my productivity because I'm even able to grade on the road because I'm listening to their presentations and write some notes when I stop, and then I could be productive on that commute to work, or time I even in the shower I'll put on a YouTube video and listen to um, a different listen to some kind of tutorial or some kind of learning opportunity. So that's my productivity hack. And for $10 on to buy a little phone mount, it saves me a lot of time where I could just have that time to learn something on the go.
Yeah, absolutely. Drive time university is
Yeah,
what I like
yeah,
to call
exactly.
that. So if you had three wishes that were granted to you right now, what would you wish for?
I would wish for more time in the day.
Okay.
I think I need 8 days a week. So I need longer
Okay.
days, more time to get things done. So that would be one wish, more time. Um, I would wish for, hmm, you have some tough questions here. Let's see. I think that, oh, that's a tough one. I think another wish would be to win my council position,
Okay.
to win my council election. That'd be another wish I would have. And I know it sounds kind of selfish, but
Hey.
that would be a wish of mine. And the third one would be to spend more time. Well, that kind of the time element. Spend more time with my family. Just be around more to help out. So, oh, you know what? I could go into wishing I didn't have to work 40 hours.
Okay. Good. Good.
So that would be a wish of mine. Yeah, it'd be cool just to naturally have enough money to support my family and not have to work because I could do so many other things. So
Indeed. Indeed. Financial
that was a
freedom is
tough
definitely
question.
something. Can you recommend three books for our audience that you felt helped you?
Yeah, I've read a lot of books. The Tipping Point is a good one.
Malcolm Gladwell. Love that book.
Yeah, I like that book. It's an easy read and basic
It's a
concepts
fascinating
that,
book.
yeah, and it's something that applies to anything, whether you're in the business world or whether you're, uh, a public servant. It applies to everything. So that's a good book. Talk Like Ted. I think Carmine Gallo is the author.
Uh-huh.
Carmine Gallo. That's a good book. It actually She discusses the different TED Talks and different communication styles and how to build your message. But that applies to anything, any type of public speaking or business um, opportunity. You need to have a message and be able to be impactful and share that message and have an audience who's not going to get bored the first 5 seconds and
Yeah.
scroll on to the next post. That's a skill that you have to learn. Another good book is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
Jocko Willing.
Yeah.
And that's a good book. It really teaches you how, that extreme ownership concept is important because it's all about accountability
Yeah.
and being dedicated to yourself, being dedicated to your team or your organization. And there's a lot of great lessons in that book as well. And all of these different authors, you have a very impactful message that applies to anything, in anything you want to do, even that just self growth and that leadership, that servant leadership, and even learning how to be a follower, how to be a team member. You can't always be the leader of everything. So it teaches you how those different type of books teach you how to basically be part of a team and be a leader.
Fantastic. Well, now what are you most looking forward to your future in community service?
I'm looking forward to the election time. I think as I start my neighborhood walks, I'm going to start meeting everyone in my district, and it's going to be a ton of work, but I got a lot of friends and family and people in my community who support me already. So looking forward, that's going to be my biggest life venture so far. I think having to convince thousands of people to not only listen to you but to get up and vote for you. And you see that in a non-election year, there I don't expect there to be lines at the polls. So even just convincing people to register, to go out and vote, that's going to be a big challenge to spread the word and let people know who I am and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to represent them in the city. So I think that's the biggest venture I have in my life right now, because everything else is pretty stable. Just you know do your job and go home. But this is something where it takes up a lot of dedication. Just branding yourself, getting your name out there, talking to business owners, talking to people in the community, answering their questions, their concerns. That's a huge. And council doesn't get paid. There's a stipend, which is pennies on the for the amount of time you put in. So people think that it's a full-time job like LA or something like that, where people that I would have to quit being a police officer. But the demands of this position, and when you see what council does, they do a lot of work. They're at a lot of events, and they're studying and they're reading the council packets before they go to the meetings, and there's just a lot of work that goes into it. So like I mentioned before, campaigning is one element, and being an actual council member is a different element. But I'm ready, I'm committed, I'm dedicated, and it's something I'm very passionate about doing. And my family and my friends too. We've invested a lot of time and money into this. It's not cheap, and that's why I chose to do my own social media. And even looking at my campaign strategies, I think I know that I have a very great opportunity to win this position, and just getting to know people. So that's my biggest venture in my life right now.
Fantastic. Is there any question that you wish I'd asked you that I never got a chance to?
No, you asked some pretty good questions. There was a range from somewhere I was like, oh, I hope I don't cry on this podcast to well, superpowers. This is getting interesting. So no, there were very good questions. I don't think that there's anything you didn't cover. I think you covered pretty much, everything that there is about me. And like I'm very transparent. Like people can ask me whatever they want. uh, I'll tell them, I'll talk to people. So you asked some tough questions. There were some good ones where I was like, oh, I hope my voice doesn't crack or anything. But I've
Absolutely.
been, I've, I've been very blessed, to have people and friends, friends from the school, friends in the different communities I belong to, whether it's my professional or you know, my service to the community. You just meet some amazing people, and it's all about those human interactions and those connections. But I think you covered pretty much everything.
Great, great, great. I will say that everybody that I've spoken to about you, has seen your, like, when you have a booth at some community events and stuff like that. One, I'm not saying this for political reasons, but one of the things that everybody has consistently said was you listen to them. I think that
Right.
was one of the things that they felt that they had a genuine conversation with you, which it's hard to say, but the feedback that I got from them is like it's rare to have the genuine conversations with people that are in a public office and things of that nature. But that was one key thing that everybody just said, like, hey, I talked to Greg and I felt that he listened, and he has a good heart, and whatever it is that he tries to do, he's it might not be the right thing or the wrong thing, but it's coming from his heart. Whatever it is that you
Right.
decide for yourself, um your opinion about him is, it's whatever he's trying to do, it's coming from his heart. So that's a
Right.
consistent message that I've got from a lot of people that I'm not going to say who they are, but it's the
Right.
consistency that I've heard about you and your
Yeah.
campaign and stuff like that. So mad
Thank you. I
props to you
appreciate that.
about that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I like the feedback, and it's cool because you meet people who are, I add people on social media all the time and hoping that they follow back. I don't know if they live in Chino or not, but the more people I could interact with, and I like the tough questions. When people ask me tough questions, if I don't know the answer, I have to go and learn the answer, whether it's asking questions or reading something or researching something. That's how I learn and grow too. So I don't know everything. And most people, when they go into city council positions, I'm very fortunate because I have the community services commissioner role, so that helped me out. But most people who go at the local level aren't experienced, political leaders or focus on policy. They're learning as they go along and being mentored by other council members as well. So I like the tough questions. When I set up in the booth at the community events, it's cool. I like it when people come and just say hello. But when they ask, well, what is your opinion on this? Or what would you do about this? Those are cool questions because they're they want to know what my plan is or what my values and beliefs are on a certain issue, and how I can resolve. Am I ready to resolve these issues? And I love it. I think it's cool. I think that's I'm when if people are quiet and they don't say anything, then they're sharing these issues or problems on, you know, the Facebook forums or something. But that's not where policy is created. Policy is created in council chambers. And so when they have a way to communicate with someone who is making those decisions, they don't have to do the legwork. The city staff and council will be there to resolve whatever issues that they can. And teaching people about local government is really cool too. Teaching people what council can and can't do and what authority they have. It's cool because at the same time, you're educating people in these little conversations. And some of the issues are school board issues or someone else's or a county issue, but they learn something too in that little exchange. So I love the tough questions. It's cool. I like it.
Fantastic. Well, in closing, what is one piece of advice that you can share with our listeners in becoming a good community servant leader?
My best advice is to find a good mentor. I think in anything, whether it's business or community, I think finding people who will mentor you and being able to listen to whatever advice they give you. And it's cool because there's people even in my campaign who don't want to get involved in city politics or anything, but they give great advice, and they may not care if I win the position or not, but they're giving the best advice that they can so that it'll help me become a better person or a better candidate. And I think seeking a mentor and being able to be mentored is an important skill or ability to have for any person, is just to sit back and listen to what they say. And also yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, is being able to mentor and be mentored.
Fascinating. Where can listeners learn more about you?
So I have a website. It's at www.marquez, the number four, chinocitycouncil.com. And also that has links to all my social media. I have Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Also have a TikTok, and that's just the way I let people get to know who I am. I'll post funny stuff, like just goofy stuff or making fun of myself, just because I like to joke around. And when you look at like political candidates, they're always this very like stern, and I'm fiscally responsible, and I'm this and I'm that. But the real me, I'm a funny guy. I like to joke around. I like to hang out with people, and at the same time, let people know I'm qualified for this position. I have an education. I have experience as a police officer, as an adjunct instructor. And being an educator and serving my community. So, the social media is where I have a little more fun. The website is a little bit more structured, and I'm going to be releasing my campaign platform statements as well, and creating more content on the website. But on the website, I have opportunities to not only engage, I have a communication plan. I have ways to donate, ways to volunteer and get involved. So those are the best, the website, and then you could get the social media links off there. And I love to engage with people and just get to know people. That's how I met you. I think I just added you at random, and luckily I got a follow back, and look at this opportunity that it led to. And I think that's great, because you know it's just a great way to meet people.
Most
And I
definitely.
meet people at community events. They're like, hey, I follow your Instagram. It's like, oh, that's cool, thanks. Thanks for following back, and thanks for liking my post. And it's cool just to meet people. That it takes you out of your comfort zone, out of your element. You're a little bit more vulnerable, because I'm sharing so much information about my family and me. You're vulnerable. You never know what people are going to do with your information on social media. And your campaign documents are open to the public, so people can find out where you live. They can find out everything they want to know about you. So I think it's cool, it's fun, and luckily I haven't had any trolls yet. So uh, it's been a fun experience. But that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I share my number with people. I share my email, my social media. I have a whole communication plan set up so that people have a way to communicate with me.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure to link all of that on the description of this interview.
Cool. Thank
You
you
know,
very much.
for sure, for sure. And yeah, I definitely can attest, seeing you waking up in the middle of the day, after your night shift, mixing your burrito. I remember that.
Oh
So
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's funny.
So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that part of your life. It makes you, I would say, accessible
yeah.
to us. And thank you for having this conversation with me. I like I told you, I think when we first connected, I know the late last year, was that I live in Chino Hills. I'm not constituent neighbor. Well, we're neighbors within the
We're
same
neighbors.
Chino
We're
Valley
neighbors.
community, but I'm not a
Exactly.
voting constituent of yours. And
Right.
you taking the time to still talk to me, and having this conversation and other conversations, being able to listen and things of that nature, I truly truly appreciate it. So I really thank you so much, Greg, for everything that you do for the community, and are going to continue to do for
Yeah.
our Chino Valley community. And I'm sure our listeners are going to enjoy this particular episode and podcast, because they'll be able to get a great insight of who you are as a person, not just Greg Marquez
Right.
the candidate, but Greg
Right.
Marquez the human being.
Right.
So I good luck on your campaign. I invite our listeners to please connect with Greg from the city of Chino. Like I said, I'm going to link all the information about his campaign on the description of this video. Also, I urge everybody to please do subscribe, share this video, leave a rating and review. I'd very much appreciate your honest feedback, which helps me continually provide impactful content that I hope you will find valuable. And always remember, every day that we face adversity, think of it as an opportunity to find the gold inside you. Until next time, have a success-filled day.
Thanks for listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Remember to visit www.behindmainstreet.com.